He's senior associate pastor at Fellowship Bible Church. Been there since 2009. He started in January 2009. He's pastor of ministries and administration, so he's kind of responsible for all financial activities, the processes and stuff like that, and oversight of the staff, like Pastor Mark. He's as well. But Pastor Everett has a heart for young adults. He actually leads the college and career ministry there, called Basic. So he met his wife, Everett Vocature, in 1986 at the college they attended, Geneva College. And they are now blessed with 4 children and 7 grandchildren. So I think he said 4 and then 3 on the way. So that's awesome. I have had the privilege of knowing Pastor Everett for a large majority of my life. He was actually my first youth pastor, which is crazy to think about. Now he's more collaborating together, so it's awesome. But he's going to lead us in this next session. So welcome him up to the platform here.
I've got to turn my mic on. There we go. All right, I got the thumbs up. Well, it is wild to think that Colin, that I was your first youth pastor, and now you're married, you have your own child. Just reminds me of all the gray hair I'm getting. But no, it's neat. It's neat to see young people grow and serve the Lord. And any part that God can use us in their lives, it's amazing. And how much more so important in our own children's lives. But, of course, let's start with a word of prayer. Father, we thank you for who you are. Thank you for being a God who loves us and wants a relationship with us. The God who sent his Son to die on the cross so that our sins can be forgiven and we can have eternity with you. And that you've given us your word so that we can know you more, that you reveal yourself to us. And you help and guide us with your word on how to do life. Father, help us to hold that very high and to guard it and help it with our families. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, parenting part here, there's a lot of good books. There's great books back there. I hope you're helping yourself to them, that they've made them available to you. There's 2 other books that I wanted to add to your list or recommend. There's one that's called Instruction of Righteousness. Instruction of Righteousness. It's kind of it's a topical guide, and what it does is if you're dealing with an issue, you can look up that issue, and it gives you all the biblical passages to go to for that. So if your child's struggling with anger, you look up anger, now you have these biblical passages. It's called Instructions in Righteousness. I was going to bring my copy, but with my 4 children, we've used it so much the cover's gone, and it wouldn't show you anything. So I should have made one for up top. But that's been a great resource for my wife and I. Another resource is called Raising Great Kids. We don't want to just raise good kids, we want to raise great kids. And this book has been instrumental, and I'll be stealing or using a lot of their information for our talk this morning. And this book, Raising Great Kids, by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend, has been instrumental for us as well. Actually, my wife and I at Fellowship Bible Church just finished a quarter of teaching a parenting class, again, in which we used that book a good bit. So we all do want to raise great kids, but of course we're always afraid of messing it up or not sure how to do it or what should I do. Well, I'm not going to be able to give you step-by-step processes for how to do it because every kid is different and the way that they respond is going to be different. But the biblical principles and the things that we're working towards will be consistent. And that's what we're going to look at. So we'll be giving you some biblical principles because, again, it's not about raising good kids. It's about raising kids with good character. And that's what we're going to focus on in this session. As parents, that should be our goal. Good kids that just obey, that do what you tell them, a lot of times end up growing up to be not so good adults. And that's because they didn't internalize. It wasn't theirs. They were just acting good. It's the idea of the fake versus the real. And I think we all understand that, right? You can get out of your car on Sunday morning fighting with your spouse the whole way here, but when you walk in, there's a smile and everything is great. We can fake it. not good. And that's true for our kids too. They can obey you because you can make them, but we want them to end up obeying because it's their character and it's their desire. And then that's going to grow into their adult life. So that's where we're going to kind of head here. The first part that I want to look at is the importance of being a parent. We understand that it's one of the most meaningful jobs that you can have in the world. It has eternal significance, this idea of being a parent. Developing a little person into an adult. You even get to name another human when you're a parent. That's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? So there's a lot of power and a lot of importance in being a parent. Well, people didn't invent parenting, God did. Pastor Raymond said this even in his first session. This was God's plan. This is the way that God designed things. And God is in the parent-child relationship for all eternity. We are his children. We are to call him Father. So we have a parent-child relationship with him, just like we're showing in our families. And our families will represent God in that relationship. So therefore, parenting is just a huge task. For our children, it's really, when they're young, it's the source of life, love, growth for everything that they know. The key element when they're a child, younger the child, is dependency. And the truth is that dependency will go on throughout their whole life. It may change on the dependency and grow, but dependency is an instrumental part of being a parent. And a child looks to the parent to provide all the things that they can't provide for themselves. And we understand that our children are growing and developing. So I want to look, before we get too far in here, at 3 biblical principles that will set the stage as we get into this character idea. The first biblical principle was also talked about this morning, and that is children are a blessing and a great heritage. Psalm 127:3 says, children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. And sometimes in the midst of the battles, we got to remember that this is a blessing from God. Because sometimes it doesn't always feel that way when things aren't going the way that we want. But children are a blessing from the Lord. And then number 2, the principle, Galatians 22:23, the character that we develop in our children should align with the Spirit, with God's Spirit. And of course that is, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. So this is one of the goals that we're trying to develop in our children, is all these aspects of the Spirit. And then finally, looking at the root and not the symptoms. Because if we manage the outside and don't deal with what the real core issue is, we're not going to get to the end goal that we want. In Matthew 7:17 and 18 is, likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. So we want to be working on the tree and not the fruit. Because if we don't have a good tree, the fruit's going to end up being bad. But if we have a good tree bears good fruit. And that's what we're going to count on. So that's what I mean by not the symptoms, but getting at the root. What's the core thing going on here? So our main thought is that the ultimate goal of parenting is creating adults of good character. And character is going to encompass a lot of different things. But our ultimate goal is this idea of character as our main thought. Success is not defined, I think I have some wordsmith problems in this one, sorry. Success is not defined now by what happens right now, but by how they act or what happens after they leave. That's really how we're going to measure the success of our parenting. Schools, jobs, relationships, all these different aspects, friendships, personal values, how they conduct themselves, their spiritual life. All these are part of their character and who they're going to become. And it defines kind of a functioning adult, a good functioning adult. God designed children to function independently of you. We don't always think about that. That God has entrusted these children to us. They belong to Him, and it's a short time. And they are designed to have a relationship with Him and with us in relationship, but they are designed to function independently. And we're trying to grow them so that they can leave and function independently. So it's one of these things that God has designed that your job will be measured by how well it ends, not on how you start. So you're investing in helping your child to leave. And sadly, they don't all grow up well. We end up seeing in our society some that are not very independent. We see young adults who we would consider to be immature, not well adjusted, kind of underdeveloped, if you will. So then here we get into who's responsible for what in developing this part of the child and the character. Well, there's three principles. Successful parenting is not defined by, I didn't move ahead, sorry. I moved the wrong slide. There we go. Oh, I don't think you can read that. Three principles related to the responsibility of raising character. Responsibility lies on a continuum that will move between the parent and the child, where both take responsibility. Obviously, the younger the child, the more responsibility is going to be on the parent. As the child grows, we're expecting that continuum to continue to move. But the truth is, sometimes we move it, and there's a failure or a problem, and we got to take some of it back. So it's a sliding scale that we have to work with. But our goal is to be working for their independence, that they have to take responsibility. And even though responsibility shifts, both the parent and the children at that time still have their roles to play. And we have to hold our children accountable for the expectation of their role at the time and the age that they're at. So the child must bear the ultimate responsibility for their life. We know that in the end, a child will be evaluated not as much on his circumstances of life or his environment that he lived in, but on how he responded to that and everything that came. Did he love? Did he practice stewardship? Did he grow, change? Is he able to forgive? 2 Corinthians 5:10 says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due for what he has done in the body, whether good or evil." And your children one day will stand before the Lord and give an account of their life. So they have to take ownership and they have to be responsible. And our job is to move them to that. And a child needs to always be moving forward towards full responsibility for not only his life, but also his soul. So your parenting, of course, is then going to reflect your goals. What are your goals? What are your aspirations for your children? And defining those for his independence, confidence, morality, religious life. Because what your values are is where your investment is going to be. So it's good to think about that and what you want for your child so that you're working towards those things. So character, again, is the real goal. The growth is the main goal. Character growth is the main goal of our parenting years when they're young and growing up. When children grow up with a mature character, they're able to take their place as adults in the world and function properly in all areas of life. So character is the sum of our abilities to deal with life as God designed us to. And childhood is a critical time when character strengths and weaknesses are formed. So when you help your child develop character, you're addressing the heart of parenting, the core value that we need to be striving at. So character provides a toolkit of spiritual and emotional skills that prepare a child to succeed. So then, what are the aspects? What are the aspects of character that we're talking about here? What are the things that go into making this character that we need to work on and develop in our children? What does character in a child actually look like? The first one is connectedness. Life comes from connectedness, from attachment. We are made to be in a relationship with God. We are made to be in a relationship with people. The greatest commandment, love the Lord your God. Right? All your heart, soul, mind. And the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. So we are relational to God and with people. And we need to make sure that our children are able to build attachments, to build connectedness with other people. It's the source, our relationship with God is the source of all good things. So we don't want them to miss out on that. And children then, to do this, need to learn to actually have needs. It's okay to have needs. And they must learn to trust. They need to learn to depend on people. And they need to have empathy for other people. These are some of the core things that will go into creating this connectedness. And, this generation, those of you who were in Pastor Ryan's message on the different generations, is more disconnected than any, largely because of cell phones. So they're okay to be home and have their social interaction taking place on their phone, and they don't know how to build relationships. So we have to be more intentional with their children to make sure that they are building different relationships and know how to connect and build relationships. Second is responsibility. Helping a child take ownership over his life and to see his life as his problem, not your problem. That's a critical thing as a transfer of ownership that needs to take place. So that you're not solving all the problems, that they realize it's their problem and they need to start solving their own problems with your help and your guidance. A lot of times my wife and I will talk about, we have the horses, and they're our children, and we have the barn at places that we can take care of them, but we also have the pasture. Now the pasture has a fence in it, but it's a big pasture. So they can run around as long as they're in the pasture. So they're going to have that freedom and that ability to explore and to learn and to fail and to do things, but within a guided area. And so as parents, we're providing that guided area for them. So responsibility then is them learning how, taking responsibility over their choices, and therefore they're starting to learn about their freedom, but with freedom has to be self-control. Because if they have freedom without developing self-control, you're going to have a problem. So we always are moving that scale to help them in the area of handling their freedoms when they're showing the proper self-control to be able to manage it and do it. And if they can't, then that's where we're going to work for them to take on that responsibility. Next is reality. It's the ability for your child to accept not everything is good in this world. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of things that hurt. There's a lot of things that go wrong. There's a lot of bad. And we have to be able to accept that things aren't always good. We have to be able to accept that you're not going to be the best player on the soccer team or basketball team that you go on all the time. Right? You're not going to be able to be the best at everything. But it works so well in the video game. But then we get out there and the reality is there's always problems. We don't always win. We don't always have or do the right things. And people don't either. So understanding reality of the world. Competence. Children need training to develop their God-given talents and the areas that He's gifted them in. 1 Peter 4:10 and 11 says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. Your children have talents. They have good things that they'll excel in. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have them do things that don't excel in. It's good to round them out. But when you see an area that they do, it's our job as parents to help foster that, to help give them the opportunity to grow and excel in certain areas, because that is what we do in life. And then we can use these things to serve God in many, many ways, whether it's in the church or out in the secular world. But we do want to identify the strengths of your children and then try to help foster and grow those areas. Grow all areas, but concentrate especially on some of their strengths and the giftedness that God has given them. And then their conscience. Whew, this is the hard one. This is the internalizing that takes place of right and wrong. It's a growth process, for sure, in children. It is when they're understanding the reasons why I'm not going to do this, and it becomes theirs. Not just because mom and dad said I shouldn't do that, right? Not just because I might get caught and there would be bad consequences, but they can internalize on the morality or the correctness or what's in our family, that we don't do that in our family, or whatever it is, so that they have this conscience that when they're going to be faced with a choice, the conscience then speaks to them. And then they got to learn to develop that, to know when to listen to that conscience, which we all have to continually develop as well, that our children are going through this process, especially as they're growing from adolescence to the teenage years. There's a huge part of that conscience that needs to take place. And then finally, worship. Worship is a big part of the character, and your child has been created in the image of God. Therefore, he is to bring worship. We have been created to worship our Creator, and our children need to understand this is a vital role of who they are. It will be part of their character, of whether they worship God, and understanding how to worship God, which Pastor Mark's breakout session dealt with family worship. I thought was important. So these character aspects are actually also aspects that God has for himself. And there's just some verses. I won't take the time, because I'm supposed to be done in 10 minutes, to go through all these. But God attaches and loves. John 3:16 is a famous verse for that. God takes responsibility and ownership for his life. Psalm 64:9. God lives in reality. Psalm 10:14. God is expert in all that he does. Genesis 1:31. God is the only one qualified to actually handle good and evil. Genesis 3:22. And he's eternal. He is God. God lives in eternal. Revelations 4:9 and 10 to be worshipped. So your first, last, and best goal is to be a good agent of developing mature character within your child's life and soul. So then how is character developed? So we're going to get into a little bit of what are we going to do here? Well, growing your child's character really comes down to two basic elements. And those two elements are development and internalizing. Development is the training through experience and practice. So we're going to do a lot of training with our children. But there's also this internalizing that needs to take place, where they're taking those experiences inside and become a part of who they are, part of their personality. So teaching, the idea of teaching, that's a transfer of information, right? Your training is teaching, but teaching alone does not make a child own or take responsibility for the information. And I think we can all identify with that. There's things that we've learned and we know, and there's this head knowledge, but it's not necessarily our heart where we're at on things that we've learned. And we need our children to move not only from the teaching aspect, but also to the internalizing. So the key word is experience. The way that a child will internalize is through the experience that they have. Therefore, we must provide structured experiences for them in the areas of training, not just lecturing and teaching and telling them. We can't just tell them. Sometimes we need to show them. Let them experience this and try it and be there to help them. And lead them that through those experiences is how they are going to learn to internalize what it is. Character parenting then provides this wealth of experience that help their children learn about the realities such as relationships, such as forgiveness, such as taking that responsibility. So small tasks repeated in many ways. and understand there'll be lots of failures. Don't expect your children to always get it right. And that's how they'll internalize, that's how it'll cause them to learn. So it's not just you telling them enough times, it's experience that makes the difference. So then how do you know what to develop in this area? You will be working on various character items simultaneously and continuously. So take a breath as a parent, it doesn't end. You're going to be working. You're going to be looking, and then you're going to be working. And then you're going to be evaluating, and then you're going to be working. But that's part of the relationship of a parent-child and the things that we want to see. So there will constantly be building the character. Just like we should still constantly be building our own character. Only we're able to do it on our own, hopefully. So we've got to work on the various character items simultaneously and continuously. And then the different tasks and levels depend on the maturity of the child, right? Depending on where the child is at is how you're going to tailor things to help them in this way. But children need to understand that all people are full of good and bad. There aren't good people and bad people, because there's good and bad in everybody. And then what happens is somebody who might be what we call a bad person, they can act good and look good, and a child can then trust them or go to them, and then all at once there's bad things that start to happen. Or their friends look good, but there's a lot of bad qualities that come out, and it can take our kids in a direction we don't want them to be. Vice versa, your child themselves may do something that's bad. That doesn't make them a bad person. They don't have to beat themselves up and think they're no work and criticize themselves. We got to deal with the issue. We're not talking about not dealing with it, but it doesn't make them a bad person. There's good and bad in everybody. Our children need to understand that, including themselves. So, developing that, making sure that they understand good and bad, and then parents, as parents, we need to monitor where our children are in the relationship and their ability to do these different things, and their sense of taking responsibility, how they can deal with loss, how they can deal with the things of the world, and that is things that we have to, as parents, identify in our children so we know what we need to be working on to develop. Well, in the next 3 minutes, we'll wrap this up hopefully, and to do that, we're going to just talk about what I call the fruits and the roots. And it is character has to do with the way the child sees and acts in the world. So that's what's important, is how is your child seeing and acting in the world? And that will show their character. Your child's behavior, attitude, emotions, these are the indicator lights. You know, the indicator light on your car, when it goes off, there's a symbol that something is wrong. Don't just put the piece of black tape over to avoid that anything's wrong. Same thing with our children. There will be indicator lights. Don't ignore the indicator lights in your child's life, because something's going to go bad. So when we see these indicator lights, we need to make sure that we're reacting. And we're looking for our children's behavior and their attitudes, their emotions in the character issues. So by observing, you will know better how to provide growth experiences tailored to help your child mature and develop in particular areas. And this is where it becomes unique, obviously, for every child. You got to know your child. You need to be involved in your child's life. You need to be there for them. You need to know what's happening. That's a part of a parent's role. Now, we've got to not do everything for them, right? We've got to release them. So we got to do this carefully at times. So we're not running their life, but we're aiding and coming alongside of them. You know, again, Jesus taught about that tree, that good tree that bears good fruit. And more than just behavior, not good behavior, you want to grow good fruit. That was that Matthew 17 and 18 verse again, about the good tree bearing good fruit and the bad tree bearing bad fruit. So if a problem arises, then you're going to deal with the root of the issue, not the symptom. So you want to identify where your child is struggling to grow up and deal with helping them on that level of wherever they are and wherever they are. Because struggling is essential. We don't want to keep our kids from ever having to struggle, because he's really happy to do that. We would want to do it in a structured way. I wanted to end with a little story about struggle. There was a child who discovered a cocoon of a monarch butterfly. He was intrigued by the transformation that takes place when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. So he brought the cocoon home, and he watched it for several days. A few days later, he was eagerly waiting, and he saw the butterfly starting to emerge from the cocoon. And he watched as this process was taking place. And he saw the butterfly begin to push and to struggle to free itself from the cocoon. Well, from all good intentions and the desire to rescue the caterpillar from a difficult struggle, the child took a pair of scissors and carefully cut the cocoon so as to free the emerging butterfly. What he discovered, to his horror, was that what emerged was a bloated butterfly with stunted wings, completely useless and unable to fly. You see, the struggle of emerging from the cocoon is part of the process in becoming a butterfly. The energy put into breaking free from the cocoon is part of the necessary step that forces the fluid from the body into the wings, stretching them out to their full size. So by removing that obstacle for the butterfly, the little boy doomed the butterfly to a life with stunted wings and could never fly. Allowing our children to struggle with difficult and sometimes painful parts of growing up is important, rather than us rescuing them in all situations. It's often the best way that they can grow and gain the strength needed so that they can enjoy a happy, productive, and continuing life. Let's pray. Father, we appreciate how you teach us. Help us. Help us to raise our families in a way that's honoring to you. Help us to show love to our kids, to be involved in their lives, to point them to you, to build their character, so that they will be men and women someday that is well suited for life, and who worships and praises you and have their eternal soul saved. We don't save anybody, you do, but we can point them to you. Help us to do that in a way that they can receive. Father, we do ask for your wisdom as we go from here today. It's in Jesus' name I pray.